In the world of crime, some stories are not about shadowy strangers or random acts of violence. Some are about the people we trust the most, the ones we usually call friends. They're also about the darkness that can hide behind a familiar smile. Welcome to Echoes. And today we step into a story from Manila, Philippines. And this story is about ambition, jealousy, and a friendship so broken it ended in the ultimate betrayal. This is a tragic murder of Julie Ann Rodelas. Julie Ann Rodelas, also known as Jaja as her friends and family called her, was a promising freelance model and a part-time talent for ABS-CBN, which is one of Philippines' top television stations. Julian had been building a name for herself in the entertainment industry. She graced magazine covers and was also working towards a degree in hotel and restaurant management. She one day dreamt of moving abroad to build a better life. By all accounts, she was a rising star with her whole life ahead of her. But Julia's story isn't just about her success, it's about the friendship that will lead to her death. You see, Julian had a best friend, another model, named Althea Altamirano. On the surface, they seem like the perfect pair. Two women supporting each other in a competitive world of modeling and entertainment. But beneath their surface, something darker was brewing. As we all know, success in the modeling world can be temporary, and opportunities don't always come equally. So while Julian was landing more gigs and getting recognition, Althea was struggling, and that struggle was turning into something much more dangerous: resentment. So how did Althea choose to stop being resentful of her best friend? That's the part we're getting to. So November 6, 2012, just past midnight in Manila, Julie Ann Rodelas was walking with her best friend Althea near the World Trade Center in Pasay City. Two men suddenly appeared. They forced Julian into a black Mitsubishi SUV right here on the street, leaving Althea standing all alone. Imagine being Juliet. One moment you're with your best friend, the next you're being dragged into a vehicle by strangers. But were they really strangers? We'll see. Julian was blindfolded and driven through the streets of Manila to a safe house in Kansas City. She had no idea where she was going or why this was happening to her. But during that terrifying ride, something happened that will seal her fate. You see, one of her kidnappers made a crucial mistake. His name is Jamal Waraji. Remember that name because he becomes important later. Jamar accidentally calls out one of his accomplices using his nickname, JR. And Julian recognized that name because the JR Julian knows is Althea's boyfriend. So the moment she was terrified, then she realized one of her kidnappers was her best friend's boyfriend. But JR's real name is Fernando. So then the pieces started to fall into place. This wasn't a random crime. It wasn't the wrong place, wrong time. So this was something personal. But according to J. Marr, Julian began pleading for her release. But at this point, recognition is a double-edged sword. Because the moment Julian recognized Fernando, she became a liability. Because she could identify the whole plot when she goes home. If they release her, that is. But Fernando could also soften up and just let Julian go. But how are they sure that Julian is not gonna go to the police when they let her go? So Fernando made the decision that would destroy multiple lives forever. Julian was shot dead in the head 5 times, and her young promising life was ended by someone connected to the person she trusted the most. But tragically, before her murder, 2 other men allegedly sexually assaulted her. But hours before Julian's body would be found, Althea Chamorano burst into a police station. She told a terrifying story about how she and Julian had been walking together along the World Trade Center when suddenly a dark vehicle screeched to a halt beside them. Men jumped out, grabbed Julian, and threw her inside a car before speeding away. And she was left standing alone, frozen in shock and terror. To the police, it sounded like a classic horrifying kidnapping, a random senseless act and now they had a terrified witness and a missing girl. But as hours ticked, there would be a discovery on a quiet street corner at 5 a.m. as the sun was rising, which turned the missing persons case into a murder investigation. Julian's body was thrown from the same Mitsubishi used for her kidnapping onto 18th Avenue in Cubell, Kansas City, after multiple gunshots were heard by people who lived nearby. She was found dead on the street, clutching a plastic bag containing McDonald's cheeseburger and a receipt timestamped at 2:33 a.m. from Union Avenue branch in Manila. So the kidnappers had gotten food during their crime spree and offered some to Julian, telling her to eat and that she'd be brought home soon. Julie Ann, unaware of what awaited her, refused, saying she'd eat when she got home. I think, during that moment, she was hopeful and optimistic that, these kidnappers were being kind enough to give her some food. Maybe to soften up, so maybe Fernando might let her go. Unfortunately, she never made it home. Anyway, the police rushed to the McDonald's location with their one solid lead, which was a receipt, and demanded to see the security footage from that night. There, on that grainy CCTV screen, they spotted him, a man at a counter ordering the exact same meal listed on the receipt. He wasn't some shadowy figure. He was a young man named Fernando Kimball Jr. And luckily for the police too, Fernando used that same Mitsubishi to go to the McDonald's. So they ran the tag and his name, and the first crack in Althea's story began to show. So they realized that, so Fernando is Althea's boyfriend, the girl who came to the police station scared and desperate to look for a friend. Wow. So in an instant, the crime went from random to deliberate. Pieces were to fall in place, and the black Mitsubishi seen in the scene was registered to Fernando's mother. So now the truth was undeniable. This wasn't a stranger's kidnapping. It was an inside job in the eyes of the police. And at the heart of it all, so that very friend who reported the crime. So with the evidence mounting, police dragged Althea and her boyfriend JR in Pampanga, which is a province in the Philippines. They were arrested. While Jamal Waraji and another suspect called Jiglan Pasawilan were arrested in Kulia district. A fifth unnamed suspect was killed in a police shootout during the arrest because he didn't want to go to prison because, wow. But Waraji provided crucial testimony detailing events from the kidnapping plot through the murder. He later became the state witness, so his confession filled the key gaps in the police investigation. I mean, man, he gave the police the front row seat to whatever happened. According to Waraji, the burger was first given to him, but he used the food as an excuse to check in on Rodelas, who was being watched by another man identified only as Aldos in a room inside a group safe house. So then Aldos passed the burger to Julie Ann, but she said she would eat after they took her home. So it wasn't an act of kindness. It was because, by Waraji's testimony, they had been on drugs, so then they had no appetite. That's why they offered the burger to Julie Ann. So it wasn't an act of kindness. And because they were also on drugs, everything they did had slip up. The drugs really clouded your judgment. Waraji also added that the reason why they didn't, take out Julie Ann right after kidnapping her was because Fernando, their boss, was with Althea at the Pasay police station after she was held in custody. So there was no one to give them orders, there was no vehicle, and there was no driver. So they didn't know what to do. So that's why the time was prolonged. It took them 5 a.m. They were in a hurry to dump the body. That's what happened. At this point, it's drugs and just negligence. But once Althea was in custody, she was confronted with the evidence and she confessed. She couldn't keep quiet for long. But her story was a twisted tale of grudge that spiraled into a nightmare. The motive behind this horrific crime stemmed from professional jealousy and personal resentment. Because Althea believed that Julie Ann was getting more modeling opportunities, but the final trigger was anger over rumors that Julie Ann had supposedly spread about Althea having 2 children. Whether these rumors were true or not, whether Julie Ann had actually spread them or not, became irrelevant in Althea's mind. So she asked her boyfriend, Fernando, aka JR, to help scare Julie Ann. Just scare her. That was the plan. And so she claimed. You'll think, after these people were caught, they have evidence and stuff, these people were going to be prosecuted and the family is going to get justice. But justice didn't come immediately. It took a whole decade because after 12 years of legal proceedings, the case concluded in December 2024. On December 13, 2024, Judge Caridad Terror of Kansas City delivered the verdict. Fernando Kimball Jr. was found guilty of murder and sentenced to reclusion perpetua, which is life imprisonment specifically between 22 to 40 years. He was ordered to pay the Rodelas family a total of, 500,000 pesos in moral damages. The court noted that Kimball, Fernando, was the one calling the shots and he decided to kill Rodelas after Rodelas recognized him. But then came the verdict that sent shockwave through the courtroom. Althea Altamirano was acquitted of the murder. The court ruled that while she was responsible for the kidnapping, the prosecution couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she knew her friends were going to kill Julian. Even though she had set the entire tragedy in motion, her jealousy was a spark that lit the fire. But in the eyes of the law, she wasn't a murderer. But she was found guilty of kidnapping and ordered to pay 100,000 pesos in moral damages, and was also released from custody because she was detained for a decade. So she was set to walk free. For Julian's family, it was an impossible pill to swallow. The person who anger started it all will not be held accountable for the final outcome after waiting all these years. What? I think it's the anger that, that was your daughter's best friend. Like your daughter's supposed cheerleader. And she's just walking away. And you're only getting compensated by more damages. She was, Julian's family wasn't the only people upset. A lot of people questioned, the verdict. Organizations like Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, which is an NGO, also disagree with the verdict and argue that under the theory of conspiracy, the act of one is the act of all, and that Althea was the one who instigated the entire tragic chain of events. What were they thinking though? Kidnapping, the possibility of kidnapping earned in a murder, I believe in my own theory that it's maybe 90% because things might go wrong. So why did they think that it wouldn't end in murder? I think at this point, justice and morals are two different things sometimes. At the end of the day, the story of Julie Ann Rodelas is one of many examples about how the most common human emotions like jealousy, anger, resentment can curdle into something monstrous. It began with whispers and rumors, the kind of drama that plays out in most friendship circles every day. But this time, it didn't end in a broken friendship. It ended with a broken family and a life stolen far too soon.